remembers this? You remember this? And actually, can we back up one, because I jumped ahead. Do you remember when your ox would wander off? I hated that. It was a bummer. So the Oregon Trail, right? In 3rd grade, I'd wait my turn, and it took about a month because there was one computer in the classroom. Go back to the Oregon Trail and sit down, that disc in, and it was the virtual world, right? You just press the space bar to continue. Sometimes I would die of dysentery, which, by the way, 3rd grade, 4th grade, I didn't know what that meant, dysentery. It was like the DOS, computer engineers that were playing a joke on us kids. I had to go home and look it up in the encyclopedia. And I was fortunate to still have the D book in our family set because some of the letters were missing in our set at home for the encyclopedia, which made it difficult to do some various reports for school when we had certain letters missing, but I digress. So the Oregon Trail, that was kind of the first entree to the virtual world, and now we have Pokemon Go, right? Remarkable improvement. So this blurred line between the virtual world and the physical world has just become bigger and bigger, right? And do you ever wonder what the tech is going on? We have kids who are learning to use technology before they learn to talk. My nephew was 1, and he had a physical magazine that he was holding, and he was trying to swipe the actual pages on the physical magazine. So we're really looking at evolution and kind of wondering, okay, did something go wrong here along the way? And a lot of people would say, yeah, something went really wrong, but actually, it went as predicted. I don't think we should be very surprised because we have seen this coming. If you think about Minority Report, right? So this movie came out in 2002, depicted of 2054. There were eye scanning and all of this crazy technology that already exists. So we're about 30 years ahead of schedule here. I was just at Dolby Laboratories up in San Francisco, and they have the ability through their EEG crazy software and tools to understand the physiological responses to audio and their visual equipment, and that allows them to change the algorithms of their product based on the physiological responses. So this is already existing. We think about things like Star Wars. Drones, who got drones? Robots, yep, we've heard a lot about artificial intelligence and just in general, where we're headed. And this really isn't a surprise because we knew this was coming. In 1965, a guy by the name of Gordon Moore, he was one of the co-founders at Intel, he realized that the number of transistors per square inch on an integrated circuit was doubling year over year. So we have on the left here the printed press, and if you go up to the top right, we have the self-driving cars. We knew this was coming, right? So this isn't a big surprise. And where it starts to get really gray and confusing and scary and messy is what is the impact on humans, right? What's the impact on our behavior, on how we communicate? There's a lot of focus on the impact around artificial intelligence. But what about emotional intelligence? And what about how we communicate and our behavior? There isn't as much focus on that. There was not too long ago a situation where an academic institution had a teacher assistant that joined during the beginning of the semester, and they were only available through iMessage. So there was this messenger app that this class had access to, and they could ask questions to this TA. And at the end of the semester, the students learned that there really wasn't a live human being. It was a chatbot. And they didn't know any different. 95% of the communication and the conversation was just very normal. And every once in a while, there would be a little glitch, and people thought, well, maybe English isn't their first language. But what we haven't really been thinking about here is, how does this impact how we feel, how we think, how we behave? The future of technology truly is the future of humanity. And that's a pretty big statement. We're at this crossroads, right? So where the virtual world and the physical world are colliding, it's getting blurrier. And I found myself at one point kind of really living in that intersection of where the virtual world and the physical world collide. And so taking a quick step back, who am I? I grew up moving around quite often. I lived in a trailer with my family and my brother in his cool socks. And we would move from state to state. We'd move, and I'd go to a lot of schools, and I became a bit addicted to change. Ended up attending ASU on a full-ride academic scholarship to the #1 party school in America. Go ASU. And ended up working in marketing and sports, and I ended up working for the Phoenix Suns, 2005-06 season. And this was when there was a lot of curiosity around digital media, of course, but also how to integrate marketing partners into our digital assets. And as the director of digital media and research, it was my job to figure out how to sell these assets, how to sell our email blast stuff, our CRM, how to monetize these assets. And so I heard about this conference. It was called iMedia Brand Summit. It was 2008. And I attended, and I heard this man. He was one of the initial investors in Twitter. His name is Mark Gwami at Sequoia, and he talked about Twitter. And I had been on Twitter and kind of been experimenting, but I didn't really quite understand yet how it would fully integrate into what I did as a job. So I started experimenting a little bit more. And I ended up going back to the front office, worked at the team, and started asking people, I think we could actually build up our presence, our influence, our following, and then sell this. I think that we could actually monetize this and have our big marketing partners kind of want to get closer to the athletes and the talent on the court. This is a way to do that, to get closer to the fans and to the athletes. And they said, hold up, we don't have any rules for this, so let's just see how this nets out. And I get a phone call one day from basketball operations. So I'm sitting there at my desk, and sure enough, they said, hey, this is, we have Shaquille O'Neal down here, and he wants to learn how to tweet. Could you come down to the locker room and teach him how to tweet? And I said, sure. They said, we're pretty sure you're the only one in the building that even knows what that is, so can you just come down here and teach him? I'm like, okay, cool. Well, little did I know that would be a pretty big pivotal point in my life. I went down and met Shaquille. He handed me his Shackberry, his BlackBerry, and I proceeded to teach him how to use it to communicate with his fans. And we started to experiment more and more, and I had these ideas of what if we would bridge the virtual world with the physical world? And we had these challenges, too, where fans didn't quite know if this was really Shaquille who was tweeting, because he had quite a few imposters, and people pretending to be him. In fact, during one of the games, live TV, there was a fan who was pretending to be Shaquille. They had gotten his name and had been tweeting during the game and saying, I'm really tweeting from the bench. You can't see my phone because it's underneath the towel, but I'm sitting here and I'm tweeting at halftime. And the league office is calling saying, what is going on in Phoenix? You guys need to stop with this Twitter stuff. So we proceeded to find ways to prove that this was him. And one day I took this idea to him and said, okay, Shaquille, what if we do random acts of Shaqness? Totally made this up. And you stand on a street corner, tweet your exact whereabouts, then tell people, the first person to find you, and they'll get tickets to the game the next night. So the first person to tag you gets tickets, and let's just try it. Let's prove that this is you, because I'll take photos, and we can repurpose those immediately. We can repurpose video on YouTube, Facebook, you name it. And so we proceeded to do this, and hundreds of fans would show up. Then eventually thousands of fans would show up. And I decided to start my own company. I decided to kind of take this concept of humanizing brands and really showing who the humans are behind the logos and bringing that more to life. And started a company, fast forward about 7 years after having the company, and worked with brands like Hilton Worldwide, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, started creating these case studies, and they're all in the book. But something started to happen personally that I think is really relevant to this whole virtual world, physical world colliding. My presence on social communication started growing as well. So at this point, I had about 1 million people following me on Twitter. And I found myself living more in the virtual world than in the physical world, and trying to keep up with that pace. I was on 210 flights in 1 year, averaging about 4 hours of sleep a night, and just completely over capacity, trying to keep up, trying to chase the unicorn. And as this was happening, I also started to notice there was a little bit of a disenchantment about why. Why am I doing this? Something happened in September 2011, September 11th, and that was the Japan earthquake. And I was on the elliptical machine with my iPad, because I was kind of bored scrolling, and I saw this breaking news on the television above me, and it showed these images of the devastation. It showed semi-trucks being washed away, and all of this crazy tragedy unfolding before my eyes. And I started to think, okay, what can I do? Here, this is happening real time. Every second matters. Every moment matters. I could see that people were tweeting, and it was trending, of course, worldwide, tweeting that they were trapped, and people were sharing messages, asking, for help. And so I started to think about not being a journalist, how could I help? Because this was a time when the media itself, CNN, NBC, all of the coverage was just the same footage repeating over and over on television. It wasn't really a time yet where social communication was being used for disaster recovery and relief. So I would find these things, these communications from people who were literally trapped, and reshare them and tag first responders. And then find maps of the outer regions where the tsunami was supposed to hit next, and share this. This was happening overnight. So I remember just finally getting to my kitchen table and shaking, because I felt like there was something more I needed to do. And everybody who was awake and was witnessing this online, they were doing the same thing. I just happened to have a little bit more of a following, so hopefully that reach and that information could be shifted from one set of hands to the other. So as this was happening, I started to think, okay, this social communication isn't just about helping celebrities get more people to their movie and launching their big products, or using social communication to market certain things. We can actually potentially save someone's life with the click of a button from the other side of the globe. And there are no geographic barriers, right? We're only bound by the speed of technology. So that's when I thought, okay, we can accelerate the process of helping one another, of acts of kindness, of disaster recovery and relief. And that's when I realized I had a purpose problem. So this was really kind of an interesting moment where I thought, okay, here, I have this company that's growing, a team, first-time entrepreneur, pretty disenchanted with my lifestyle, and also the use of how we're using this technology. What am I going to do? And eventually, over time, ended up exiting the company and starting to realize that there was a lot of purpose missing. The passion was there for the company that I was growing and that I was excited about, the skill was there, but there was this deficit of purpose. And where purpose, passion, and skill collide, bliss resides. And that purpose is what gets us through those ups and downs when our passions change. So my passion was changing. So I did what typically you would do, sold everything, and moved on to a boat for a year. And I thought, I'm going to figure out what I want to do with the rest of my life, because I clearly have a purpose problem, and I had a lot of self-work to do, too. When I was living more in the virtual world than the physical world, I didn't really like the person that I became. I probably wouldn't have even hung out with her. The inside didn't match the outside. It was a storyline unfolding of what was happening, but really there was no presence. So here I am, trying on the boat, thinking, okay, what do I do next? This world that I am kind of known for, and this land of social communication, I want nothing to do with it. I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And I remember waking up one morning and seeing my own Facebook feed after one of the primary debates. And I remember seeing the hatred and the amount of intensity and the anger about the presidential candidates. And I thought, that's it. I think I'm done. I think I'm quitting social media. And I can't believe how much trash and how much anger and hatred is being thrown around. If we were in the physical world, we can't litter. Why are people littering so much in the virtual world? Why is there so much anger? And what can I do about it? So that moment of, I'm going to quit, didn't last long, because I have to do something. And this is the world I kind of live in, so I had to figure something out and decided, okay, I'm going to start researching this more. What was it about the world of media, social media, that I fell in love with to begin with? And here we are back at that crossroads. It's really when that virtual world and the physical world collide. That's what I love. That's when I see the magic happen. That's when we can scale behavior, and back to the Japan earthquake situation, that act of kindness. We saw it too with the Ice Bucket Challenge. $115 million was raised really quickly. And so we see these moments of brilliance where these micro acts of good and kindness create these macro impacts. But why aren't we doing this every single day? And it's because we're fatigued. We are so fatigued by the amount of messaging, being inundated by our technology, our email, our iMessage, our social media, our Slack, you name it, there is constantly some sort of notification, right? The amount of times we check our phone, it's incredible. So we're fatigued, but we're also lacking serotonin exchange. So serotonin works like this. If you do something nice to me, you get a hit of serotonin, and so do I as the recipient, but so does everyone else who witnesses the act. So it is potentially scalable, right? We are not interacting the same way that we used to because we're communicating differently. So there is a deficit of serotonin exchange. And we all have seen this. And then you add being present. How many times have we all been at a concert or at an event and we're capturing it with our phones, but we're not really there in the moment because we're so focused on what is that going to look like on Instagram, or how am I going to tag this person or that XYZ. This was an interesting photo that I found, bottom 2013 during a Pope announcement, and the top 2005. All of these people are not really present. They aren't really being where their feet are. And then we add the anger, which you have all seen in your own personal use of social media and just being online. So you have those elements, and that's why. That's why we aren't scaling this act of kindness online, because of those elements. I started researching serotonin more. And given I have an ASU degree, marketing degree, I'm not exactly a scientist. So I am going back to school, but I was able to sync up with some legitimate scientists. And it's really interesting if we start looking at serotonin and its implications on online. Here's a quick video that I think sums it up really well.
Matter of fact. Like most medical antidepressants, kindness stimulates the production of serotonin. Serotonin heals your wounds, calms you down, and makes you happy. The real kicker? Kindness boosts serotonin in the giver, the receiver, and everyone who witnesses it. Every act of kindness also spreads through 3 degrees of separation, and serotonin is just the beginning. You'll also produce more endorphins, the brain's natural painkiller. Endorphins are 3 times more effective than morphine, and they won't land you in jail. And if that's still not quite enough, being kind produces oxytocin in your system. Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, promotes social bonding, exerts an immediate calming effect, increases trust and generosity, strengthens the immune system, and boosts virility. I guess they weren't joking when they said, being kind is a good thing. To top it all off, compassionate people also have 2 times the amount of DHEA, which slows down aging, and 23% less cortisol, the infamous stress hormone. With so many benefits, every act of kindness is a healthy one. It's a scientific fact.
So we start to add science into things, because if you start talking about kindness and online, it starts to sound very fluffy, like unicorns and rainbows and let's all be kind, which is nice, but then nobody will listen and nobody will be mobilized to actually go and do it. So I started studying more about serotonin and think about the network effect that we have online. And then you think about laying on top of that an overlay of serotonin, and potentially we have nearly infinite amount of people who could witness kind acts being exchanged online, so technically we should be able to spread and scale serotonin, right? So I had this theory, and I started to do some very remedial research to begin with, and then I was able to sync up with the legitimate scientists. But the first thing I did is I tried this. I tweeted to about 1 million people, hey, can I help anyone right now? I have about 30 minutes free. Happy to help. And the response was fascinating. At first, crickets. And then finally, a few people would come forward. And sometimes people would ask, serious questions like, hey, can I get a little bit of advice about this job interview? I'm headed in. Do you have any last-minute tips? And then other people would ask funny questions, and we'd be just exchanging jokes. And a lot of people, though, said, you know what, there's nothing you can do for me right now, but thank you for asking, because now I want to go do the same. So I thought that was interesting. I kept doing that, and I'd use hashtag spread serotonin. This was just a pure experiment. The next experiment that I tried was asking my personal friends on Facebook to do 3 things. I posted this and said, number 1, please like this post, so it'll keep the Facebook algorithm happy and we can keep this post up in the feed. Number 2, please post something in the comment section that you could use help with. And 3, scroll through the comments and see if there's anyone you could help. The response to this was fascinating. Thousands of likes, thousands and thousands of interactions. This was in the top of the feed for quite a while because of the amount of activity. And people were asking for big things, for heavy things, for light things, in terms of, I'm looking for a study buddy. I'm studying a certain type of fish. Is there anyone that knows this species of fish? And sure enough, they find someone on the other side of the globe. Another person says, I'm struggling with insomnia. That was a big topic. There were a lot of people that had conversation around that. Another person said, I have this idea. I want to pitch to Elon Musk. Does anybody have any connections with Elon? And eventually someone said, you know what, if you can prove to me that your idea is strong enough, I do know Elon, and I could potentially get in front of him. So this was just fascinating, and what I started to learn was people, it was kind of like a kindness was a currency. There was a give and take going on, so people felt like they had to earn their ask. They would scroll through the comments first, see if they could help anyone, and then make their own ask. It was pretty interesting. Then I decided to take it to the next level and was able to partner up with various scientists, and we created a clinical research study that really looked at the impact of what we are exposed to online and how that translates and impacts our behavior offline. So we had two groups here. We had 500 people raise their hand, and they said, I will participate in your study. They didn't know what it was really about. 2 private Facebook groups were set up. The 500 people were dispersed randomly into either a control group or an intervention group. Now, the control group was quite boring. We just fed very neutral, unbiased content to them. And the intervention group was where the action was. We intentionally had seeded individuals to go in and report and post acts of kindness. So these were anything from big things to small things. Here's an example of one where Melissa helped someone that needed their car towed, all the way to there were other types of acts of kindness, like, I was at the grocery store and the person in front of me the person in back of me had 2 items and I had a cart full, so I let them go in front of me. So very small to big. And the response was quite fascinating. We started to see these people in the intervention group start to report their own acts of kindness, people that didn't even know what was going on. And we would ask the same question day over day. There were 10 questions, 9 red herrings, and 1 intentional, specific question that was measuring their behavior. And they were asked if they had helped anyone, big or small, separate from what they typically would do in their day. So were they changing their behavior? Over the course of just 3 days, there was a 10% increase in the amount of acts of kindness and change in behavior that the intervention group had when compared to the control group. So 10%. So basically what we're saying is, and this is preliminary, we're doing another study that's much more dense, but what we're looking at is what you're exposed to online is impacting potentially your behavior offline. Intuitively, we know that, but until we can actually prove it, that's when the conversation really starts. So Time Magazine recently did this article on trolls. Cover article, thousands of words on negative behavior, trolls, and 1 line in the article mentioned the research that we're doing and talked about actually the flip side of this. What if we were to start kind of looking at the positive, pro-social behavior? And really there is very little, if any, research being done on this side of things. So I just, for my podcast, interviewed a forensic cyber psychologist, which is fascinating. But what about the flip side? Who's really researching the sociology meets social communication and media meets cyber behavior and psychology? That's why I'm going back to school, is because there really isn't a whole lot being done on that side of things. So when we look at this concept of can we scale kindness, not in a fluffy way, but if we start adding up those micro actions, do they create that macro impact? And how do we research it? How do we study the impact and the measurement? Well, I've recently partnered with a brand new nonprofit called kindness.org. It's a very well-funded organization that is rooted in just that, in the research of kindness. And we've partnered with Oxford University, and it turns out after our first study, a meta-analysis on all of the studies that have been done on kindness, the net is that we actually don't know that much about kindness, because most of the studies that have been done have been funded by organizations that want a certain outcome. So we're at this phase where we are actually starting to measure that and look at how we can make kindness more efficient. We just launched a couple weeks ago, and this video that I'm about to share with you went truly viral. 40 million views in the first 72 hours, and 150 countries visited our site, kindness.org, and pledged to do an act of kindness within the first couple of days. Here's the video.
Can I help anyone with anything? X? Nah. I'm trying to do a couple of nice things for people today. I just wondered whether there's anything I could do for either of you.
I don't know.
Nice to meet you. I'm Joe.
Hello,
Hey.
Joe.
Hey. I'm trying to be kind to as many people as I can be. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Such a unusual request. We can only see. Do you need any directions? No. Do you have a minute?
No, sorry, I'm in a hurry.
Worst case scenario is that no one trusts me. I come away from it, I'm like, I'm not a nice guy. I wonder whether I can help you with your bags. You seem to have a lot.
It's really sweet of you, but I'm okay.
People are a bit suspicious. They don't really want your help enough for them to put themselves in danger of someone who might have ulterior motive, you know?
No. Anything nice?
Anything.
Pay for the next person's bus fare.
It's the first time I've ever done this. Really? Yes. I'm just paying for her bus.
It's called altruism, and you are doing something that will make you feel good.
You got a ball boy now?
I'm building a structure if you want to help, but I think it'll take a while.
No, I'm down.
Are you rich?
Why do you ask that?
Because you want to help people or you need money.
Well, I don't have money, but I've got time. You want one now? You're lying, you never will, do you? No, it's easy to help people and have a conversation with people, but we haven't figured out yet how to go deeper, I don't think. It's one of my really good friends' birthdays next week, and I can't make it. You have to make some effort with people's birthdays. If no one makes an effort with your birthday, it's kind of sad, isn't it?
Oh my god, hello! That is really kind of you.
This project, it's about kind of small things that you can do to make an impact. So you're the first person I know who I've done something nice for.
People go through a hard time. If it takes someone to stick themselves out there, that'll make a real difference.
I just want to do one nice thing for one person today, and that's what I want to do.
I guarantee you've just done that.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear, man. Appreciate that.
Bless.
We've actually gone back into each other's lives more, right? And I think that's why you are on my mind. We are closer to each other than we ever have been.
I feel, I'm sorry. I just feel really moved.
You know, we can't say what is meaningful or not, because the small thing is meaningful, because it can have that butterfly effect.
So there were 40 million views, 0 advertising within the first couple of days, and it just goes to show the craving for kindness. And if you're interested, check out kindness.org. You can see my initiative, the Spread Serotonin, and I encourage you to take part. But as we take a step back and think about, okay, what does this mean to you? What does this mean to your day-to-day job, what you do? And how does it really fit into your world? And I gave this talk recently, and this individual came up to me after and said, you know, that's great, I'm going to take this back to our community relations team and kind of explain what you talked about. And, you know, we do some things with charity. I said, whoa, this isn't just about doing more with your charitable department or foundation side of your business. This is about really looking at how can we start to bake in more serotonin into our messaging? How can we start to revisit our value proposition and look at that exchange of serotonin and really take a step back and not try and bucket kindness into a division or a department, but really look at it in everything we're doing. Because the amount of influence in this room and the amount of power that you have over messaging, over media, is huge. And there is an upside to that serotonin exchange. If you put a brand in the middle of that interaction, they became instant heroes. They become the amount of brand love and a brand loyalty you can see from putting a brand in the integrated into that process and exchange is pretty amazing. So our virtual worlds and our physical worlds are colliding. That's happening. The future of technology is the future of humanity. And the best way to predict the future is to create it. So I hope you think about this as you go about your day. And thank you so much for your time. If you're interested in the research we're doing or want to stay in touch, feel free to shoot me a note, or you can sign up for my e-newsletter at amyjomartin.com. And I will be here for the rest of the day and this evening, so if anybody would like to continue the conversation, please find me, and I look forward to that as well. So thank you.